Hey, yo, what is up? Two new tanks popped into the test server. They are Tier 7s, and one Tier 8 that's in the super test has got nerfed into the ground. That's the AMBT. But first, let's talk about the 1.15 release date. Looks like some leak news came out, and it is slated to be released around the 6th, 7th, and 8th of December. 6th on the Asian server, 7th on the NA, and on EU and RU on the 8th of December. So be expecting your Christmas events, maybe your Advent calendar events to start, I suppose, on 8th or 9th of December. That should be the target date for this release. So anyway, before we get into the two new Tier 7 tanks, the tank that got super nerfed is the AMBT. Now this tank was rumored to be one of the Christmas box tanks, which I think it still is, but it has been nerfed. The initial release of this news made this tank look very strong and very interesting indeed. It had a slow reload, and it still has a slow reload time, but it had a huge alpha gun auto reloading, much like a Progetto 46. Let's talk a little bit about it. The engine power that used to be 800 horsepower has been nerfed down to 650 horsepower, which is exactly like a Progetto. The power to weight ratio, which was 22.22, which was very good power to weight ratio, made it very high agility, now has been nerfed to 18.06, even lower than a Progetto. Progetto is 18.63. The speed still remains the same, 40 kilometers an hour going forward. A Progetto is 55, so a win for the Progetto there. Traverse speed 33.38, a Progetto is 35. There's no change on the traverse speed and hull rotation speed. Hull rotation speed is fairly slow, 29.2 degrees, where a Progetto is about 48 degrees per second. So those are some of the changes. There are a little bit more nerfs here, but we'll go and talk a little bit about more about what's happening. If you didn't know, this has almost the same hull armor as the Progetto, around 70 millimeters frontally. A Progetto has 80, but remember, this has a very sloped frontal armor, which means the upper armor is upper plate is almost auto bounce because of its a lot of sloping here. However, the lower plate is absolutely humongous, which makes this a huge weak point. But the turret armor is 250 millimeters, and it is highly sloped, a lot like a 60 TP, in that Polish kind of tank, that shape. Very bouncy turret. So this is one of the strengths of this tank. That remains the same, 250 millimeters frontally, plus all that sloping. I don't know what the effective armor is going to be like, but definitely 300 plus millimeters of turret armor, I would assume. This has also changed the rate of fire, of course. The DPM has changed because the reload time has changed. The reload time for the first shell was 11 seconds. They've changed it to 13 seconds. The second shell, 15.34. It used to be 12.46, so a huge nerf in terms of all the reload time. The 3-shell auto reloading magazine, the full reload was 41.23 seconds. Now it is nerfed up to 48 seconds. Of course, The projectile reloads in 25 seconds, and the first shell is like under 7 seconds, right? 6.9 seconds. The AMBT is going to be 13.42. Even without nerfing it, before they consider nerfing this, it was already quite terrible, 11.5 seconds. Now they're pushing it even further to 13.5 seconds, and total reload 48 seconds. It's going to be devastating for this tank. I think from a good tank, this became like kind of not a good tank at all right now as it stands. Also, the aiming time, 2.59 seconds. It has been nerfed down to 2.88 seconds. A projectile reloads in 2.01 seconds. So like I said, all the new changes that they've made to this tank is going to make it actually a pretty terrible tank. But all hope is not lost. This is still in beta testing, so they could change it before they actually release it. You know, they could be trolling us, or they could be could be tricking us, or not making our hopes too high. They could change it back, who knows. We'll find out within the next week or so, I suppose. The next tank that is being introduced into the game is the T-34-54. This is a T-34-85M hull with a T-54 turret, I suppose. And we have some initial stats on it, but we also have some in-game stats, so we'll look at that while we go over the stats. This is of course a Tier 7 tank, 1250 hit points with 500 horsepower. The power to weight ratio is 14.75, which means this is not like a super agile medium tank at Tier 7, but it is kind of a light tank, 33.9 tons, so it could be quite agile, who knows. Maximum speed is 55 kilometers an hour going forward, 20 going backwards. That's not too bad. Rotation speed is a 38.59, which means quite agile. Gun rotation 37, pretty good as well. The hull armor 75 in the front, 45 on the sides and back. Again, sloped frontal armor, so 75 millimeters could be plenty. What is special about this tank is the turret armor, 200 millimeters from the front. Of course, this is the T-54 turret, or a T-44-100, I suppose, has the same kind of shape, kind of bouncy on the sides. The mantlet is 200 millimeters, which will make it kind of strong frontally, and then the sides is kind of like bouncy kind of turret, pretty good. The damage, 180 damage on the standard and premium shells, 300 on the HE shells. Not that great damage, to be honest with you. Kind of little bit better than the Tier 6, I suppose. The penetration as well, not that great, 171 on the standard shells, 210 on the premium shells. Not too bad, premium shells, but standard shells only 171. I say only because Tier 7 tanks nowadays seem to be getting stronger and stronger, just like everything else. Reload time is pretty good, and that's the good thing about this tank, 5.37 seconds. You might not even need to run a rammer. You could use that slot for reducing that dispersion down from 0.37 to 0.35 with an improved aim. Of course, if you're running food, if you're running vents, if you have BIA, you could get this dispersion down to 0.33 as well. And if you don't run a rammer, if you can live with 5 seconds reload, which is plenty quick for a Tier 7 fast reloading, I think it's pretty good. You don't need to run a rammer if you don't want to. Just improve the gun aiming. I think that's how I would play it anyway. Gun depression 7 degrees, gun elevation 17 degrees. This is an interesting tank. It looks pretty good. I always like the T-34 85 hull, and this turret is very famous and very popular, so I think this will be actually a pretty successful tank, and it also looks like it's going to be one of the loot box tanks as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. The next tank, there is no in-game pictures for it, but we have a little bit of the stats. This is also a tier 7, but this is a Yo tank, tier 7 premium. This is a tier 7 premium with the extra tracks, extra track mechanic. Pretty difficult to track kind of tank, and yeah, pretty interesting because it has a 240 alpha gun, 202 penetration, 242 premium penetration, which is pretty good for a tier 7, and 9 seconds reload time. Obviously, you with all the cruise skills and loader and rammers and whatnot, probably get this down to 7 plus 8 seconds reload time. Aim time 2.2 seconds, not too bad. Dispersion 0.4, what you expect from a heavy tank. 10 degrees of gun depression, hull down, pretty good. Also, this has pretty good hull armor 165, and it's sloped. Turret armor as well 203, pretty good, and sloped. We're talking bouncy, but then pretty heavy tank, and you know, pretty sluggish of course, because this is a heavy tank. 14 power to weight ratio, traverse speed pretty slow, 28 degrees. Yeah, but still also an interesting tank, but I don't know if a lot of people are interested in tier 7 tanks. We will hear more and see more about this tank in the coming days and weeks, I suppose. That's all I have for you today. I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.